What is the most disgusting thing you have ever done that you took pleasure in? When I think about it now, it feels almost like a blur. The way everything changed and how quickly I went from feeling like I had the perfect life to being consumed by a need for retribution. It wasn't always like this. There was a time when everything was simple. My wife and I, we had two wonderful daughters, 13 and 10. We had a home that felt warm, a life that felt comfortable. We'd built it together over 15 years, brick by brick, piece by piece. Everything seemed right. Or at least I thought it did. But then things started to shift, almost imperceptibly at first. At first it was small things. My wife, who had always been open about everything, suddenly became distant. She'd spend hours on her phone, constantly scrolling and tapping, her face glowing in the dim light of our living room. I didn't think much of it at first. People get busy, right? But then the changes started piling up. She'd delete her saved passwords on the shared computer. I didn't think much of that either. Sometimes she would do that when she was organizing things, but it was still odd. The real shift came when I began noticing the phone calls. She'd take them in another room, and whenever I walked in, they would end abruptly. Not just in a way that felt like she didn't want me overhearing something personal, but in a way that felt calculated. Like she didn't want me to know what was going on. There was no denying it for long. The more I thought about it, the more certain I became. It wasn't just paranoia. Something was happening, something I didn't want to face. I tried pushing it aside, but eventually I couldn't ignore it any longer. When she told me she was taking the girls to a weekend event, I decided to follow her. Maybe I was desperate for answers, or maybe I just wanted to see if I could prove that I was wrong. But deep down I already knew I wasn't. She drove to a hotel. A hotel I'd never seen her visit before. And there I saw him. I couldn't explain what I felt in that moment, not at first. It was more than just the betrayal. It was a sickening realization that I was watching my life crumble in real time. I stayed there, parked down the street, just watching. For what seemed like hours, I watched them go inside together. I cried. I didn't hold it back. I cried for everything I thought I had, for the future I thought I would have with her. But after the tears came something else. Something colder, sharper. A decision. I wasn't going to let this destroy me. I wasn't going to wallow in helplessness. I wasn't going to let her get away with it. I needed to act. And when I thought about it, when I really thought about it, I knew that I would. But it wasn't going to be impulsive. It wasn't going to be messy. I was going to be smart about this. Calculating. The first step was getting evidence. I could have just taken a wild guess and made a big scene. But no. I needed to be sure. I needed to catch them red-handed, so there would be no room for denial, no way to justify it. So one morning when she left for work and the kids were at school, I got to work. I installed small cameras and microphones in the house. It wasn't a decision I made lightly. This was crossing a line. But I was already so deep into this that it felt like there was no turning back. The hardest part wasn't setting up the equipment, it was keeping my cool, pretending everything was fine. The next weekend, I put the plan into motion. I told my wife I was going to take the girls on a short trip. We didn't go far, just to a small town a few hours away, but it was enough. The girls were excited. They were used to me handling the majority of things around the house, helping with homework, making dinner. My wife was usually busy working or drinking, so this wasn't out of the ordinary. She didn't ask too many questions, just kissed the girls goodbye and wished us well. While we were gone, I checked the footage. It was everything I feared and more. For 36 hours, I watched them. I watched as they laughed and joked, as they shared intimate moments. I heard them talk about me, about how inadequate I was, about how I didn't measure up. I wasn't even surprised by the cruelty of their words. It hurt, but it wasn't unexpected. But what really stung was hearing her talk about things I had told her in confidence. Things I had shared with her in a moment of vulnerability. Stories from my past, painful memories I had never wanted anyone to know. She shared them with him and they laughed. That was the part that broke me. I knew what I had to do next. There was no room for hesitation anymore. I couldn't pretend this wasn't real. But I also knew I couldn't just let her walk away without facing the consequences. I wasn't going to destroy her, not in the way I could have. I loved my daughters too much to let them see that side of me. But I had leverage. I had the power to make sure she would never have a chance to take them from me. So I confronted her. I didn't yell, didn't plead. I showed her the footage. It was simple, clear. There was no denying it. I told her that if she didn't sign the separation agreement, if she didn't leave the house, I'd tell the girls everything. In graphic detail. I knew I wasn't going to do it. I knew I couldn't. But she didn't know that. She broke down. Denial, anger, bargaining. The whole cycle. But she was too emotional to think clearly. In the end, she signed the papers. And she left that night. I didn't tell the girls anything they weren't ready to hear. They were old enough to understand but not old enough for the details. I simply told them that mommy had been unfaithful. My younger daughter took it hard but in her own way, while my older daughter, well, she was just starting to understand relationships. And her world crumbled in that moment. It hurt me to see her upset. But I knew deep down that this was the better choice. I couldn't let her be lied to. Not like I had been. Then the fight started. She didn't just accept it. She fought me. She fought for the kids, for custody. She'd come over during her visitation and talk about how it was all my fault. She blamed me for not forgiving her. She told our youngest that I was the one destroying the family. I wasn't prepared for how far she'd go. Her lawyer even started demanding custody. That's when I enacted the final part of my plan. A trip to South Carolina. It wasn't just because I wanted the girls to see Fort Sumter, though that was part of it. It was because South Carolina was one of the last places where revenge of this nature wasn't illegal. Where I could upload everything, every intimate moment, every humiliating clip, and not worry about legal repercussions. I sent it all, to her employer, her clients, Steve's wife, Steve's firm. It was out there. It was done. The aftermath was quick. Steve's wife left him. My wife lost her job of 8 years. And as for me, I got full custody of the girls. She was unemployed. She had no alimony. I didn't need it. I made enough to take care of us. I wasn't bitter, just resolute. I was the one who'd been wronged, and I had to make sure that, for once, I was the one to walk away with what I deserved. Months later, I heard from her again. A threat. She said she'd come after me. That what I'd done would be her revenge. But I didn't fear her anymore. I had already won. And I would keep my girls. I'd keep them safe and I'd raise them right. I had become the man I needed to be, not the one I once was.